Hello, welcome to 21 This Week. I'm Susan Hoffmann, filling in for Casey Aiken. Coming up next, the 2018 legislative session came to an abrupt end on Monday. Amazon on the brain, and the campaign season is heating up. We are joined today by an astute panel of political insiders. Former Rockville Mayor Susan Hoffmann, former Democratic House Majority Leader John Hurson, Rockville activist Brigitta Mulligan, and County Council member and everybody's friend Nancy Floreen, who is not a candidate this year. Stay tuned for these topics and more right here on 21 This Week. Sine die was observed on Monday, and that means that another session of the Maryland General Assembly is in the books. A press release from the County Council today noted that MoCo will get $54 million in school construction, $131 million in capital investments, $39 million for new buildings at Montgomery College and the University at Shady Grove. In addition, the repayment schedule from the Wynn case was adjusted, and very importantly, the state committed to $167 million annually for Metro. Nancy, as a longtime member of the County Council, how did Montgomery County fare this year in the legislative session?
Well, following the money, as I understand it, we got about $34 million more in state aid than we got last year. About $26 million of that is in school operating costs. That's a good thing. And the final decisions have not been made about school construction costs. So the number that's we've demonstrated so far, I think it's $54 million, is not the final number. So we're hopeful that we'll be getting some more cash, and that's really a huge thing for us. And of course, Metro.
Cash is always a good thing. So Susan, several safety measures were also passed this year, including banning bump stocks on guns and adding funding for school safety officers in all high schools, along with money for school safety improvement. Is this enough, or should have more been done this session?
Well, I think this was a common sense move on the part of the legislature. It makes a great deal of sense. Other trigger mechanisms were also banned, and as to whether or not it's adequate, I think it's too soon to know. Hopefully it will be adequate, and hopefully we won't need to put it to the test.
Amen to that. John, Maryland also added a tax on insurers to stabilize Obamacare in Maryland, something that Congress just hasn't had the will to do. So what is this going to be enough to protect Marylanders' health care, especially when years ahead are not going to have an election?
Yeah, no, what the legislature did, and I would say also the governor participated in this, they did something very clever. So the U.S. government cut everybody's taxes, particularly corporations, and they said, okay, the corporations in Maryland that got this big windfall, let's take that money and create a pool of funds that can help people and help the system stabilize. It was a very, very smart move, and I congratulate not just the legislature but the governor.
This isn't just a one-year fix then?
It's not a one-year. It's a one-year fix for the moment, but the question is, how does that go forward in terms of the tax incentives and everything that the federal government is doing with their tax?
Oh, okay. So, Brigitta, two interesting pieces of social legislation occurred. First, the Maryland Me Too movement is credited for legislation that will make changes in the legislature to monitor harassment and abuse. Delegates Ariana Kelly, Maurice Morales, and Senator Cheryl Kagan were given credit for the passage. Also, in a very emotional debate, conversion therapy was banned, with a Republican state senator and his daughter, a Republican delegate, on opposite sides. What are your thoughts on these pieces of legislation?
Well, the first thing that kind of struck me when you asked me about this, and you said it was the Me Too movement, and I'm like, what is this about? And I did hear about this bill, but I didn't know exactly what it was, so I read it today, the Senate Bill 1028. It's actually a health bill, and it's actually, I don't understand why the state should have a say in what counselors can say to students. It has to do with the identity of the student.
Conversion therapy.
Yes, and to be honest with you, I was surprised that it got passed. I'm hoping that that Larry Hogan will veto it, but obviously that might not happen. But it's a very sensitive thing, and I just don't agree with the vote. But it bothered me when you said the Me Too, and it was like,
well,
what's
the Me Too movement is separate legislation
Yeah.
about harassment at the state level. There were
Yeah.
2 pieces of legislation there.
Because I only saw the one bill was at the 1028, you know, so I was a little bit confused. I wasn't kind of that.
Jump in there
Yes.
for a second? I mean, the conversion therapy bill was a very, very important bill to a lot of people in this state. And as a leader on this issue in the country, it was very important to pass. Conversion therapy is a very bad thing, and I think it's great that the state of Maryland, and I very much hope the governor signs it, because it's a really serious issue that needs to be dealt with, and I'm glad the legislature did this.
Well, there were some health issues also about that where they would not be covered. So to me, I was not real clear after reading the bill. It was very complicated to me. And
well,
I
and the Me Too movement, I think it's time. There have been stories for decades going around about harassment in the state legislature, and you know, not only with members but with aides and everything else.
I just didn't think that bill addressed that when I read it.
That is a different bill. There were
You're right.
There are 2 different issues, but I think it's a long time coming, and we have people right here in Montgomery County who will help move it along, so that's a good thing. So we still have some time left. We can't forget that hunters can now wear pink clothing hunting in Maryland now because of the works of 2 young sisters from the Eastern Shore. So kids out there, you can get things done. So what I want to know from all of you now, what pieces of legislation and or legislators were the winners and the losers this session? And I'm going to start with you, Brigitta. Do you have winners or losers?
Yes, this session I was very active in following the bills, the SAFE bills that they called. They basically would either make Maryland a sanctuary state. Kathy Shalala introduced a bill that did not get passed, and there was another one that was the House Bill 1461, which was to allow the enforcement of reporting to the Immigration and Homeland Security, and it would more or less follow what Frederick County is doing with their program. And I was very against not having that enforcement of dealing with illegal aliens. I think that that's a big issue. And then there was another bill by Warren Miller in Howard County, I believe, that was introduced. And
was that also about immigration?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So next we're going to go. Nancy, what do you think? Winners, losers?
Well, I'm delighted that the legislature passed the PRIME Act. That's the package of incentives to make it clear that Maryland and Montgomery County are open for business. We'll see if how Amazon reacts to that. But I think it's a real statement that Montgomery County legislators signed on to that, and certainly we on the council are all behind it. And it's kind of a sea change for us, being open to business in a big way.
Okay, well, Susan, your winners and losers.
So I agree wholeheartedly on the Amazon piece, but also the fact that we finally have created a line item funding for Metro. Finally, after, I don't know, 40 years or more. Virginia's on board, the District of Columbia's on board. I think that was a huge win. As far as losers, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, probably Peter Franchot had a very bad session.
I think you're right there. John, your winners.
Agree on the Metro and the Peter Franchot comments. I want to shout out for Ben Kramer on his Beagle bill. This is a bill that actually lost, but I think he's bringing it back. It's basically about dogs and cats who are part of animal testing in laboratories and trying to get them adopted out of that system. It was a great bill, and I'm sorry, Johns Hopkins, who has a big presence in this county, came in and killed the bill, and that's bad. But Ben, as Senator Ben Cramer, is going to bring it back. And I'm encouraging him to do that. I think it's a good thing.
And you know,
there'll be more beagles.
There will be more beagles. Beagles are the most cutest dogs
and
ever.
Ben
Can't have too
Cramer,
many beagles.
Ben Cramer is the animal rights person in the legislature.
My hat goes off to him
because he is working on that. So I think that the interesting thing, as John and Susan allude to, is watching what happens, because there was legislation to take the beverage industry away from Comptroller Francho, and it didn't pass. But you know, with his behavior the way he's now, it may change next time. So okay, we're going to be right back after this short break. Stay tuned. The new site of Amazon seems to be the topic of conversation across the county wherever two or more are gathered. The prospect of good jobs and increased tax revenue seems enticing to almost everyone. Nancy, County Executive Leggett has proposed an expedited development review process for Amazon to enhance the county's prospects of getting the green light from Amazon. This would enable Montgomery County to be more competitive, according to Leggett. A process that can take 120 days would be cut to 60 days. Is this a good deal? And if it's a good deal for Amazon, should it not be a good deal also for everyone wanting to develop here?
Well, let me say, people have been complaining for years about how long it takes to get anything done in Montgomery County. So I think this is progress. You know, what's important to understand, though, is this is not changing the rules. So in terms of community participation, in terms of reports, in terms of compatibility issues, traffic tests, you name it, all the usual array of standards will continue to have to be satisfied by whatever large employer satisfies the criteria. And the challenge for us as a community, as a government, really is it's going to take a lot of staff to work through all the details in a concentrated fashion. And so, you know, we just don't fund. We're not funded enough to make things happen in a rapid way ordinarily. Well, what we will do for that many jobs.
Well, now, John, billions of dollars were quickly passed through the legislative session to entice Amazon to come here. Is that good for the taxpayers, this incentive billions?
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. I think you pass an incentive package. If the company comes, you have to pay. I mean, you have to...
And with them will come their dollars.
And come their dollars. If it doesn't come, you don't have to pay. So it's about enticing groups. And I think people need to get over the idea that it's like, oh, you're using taxpayer money to entice. Every other jurisdiction in this country does the same thing.
It'll bring more
we have
money.
to play the game.
It'll bring more money to the
And we have more money now in the pocket than anybody except New Jersey.
Can I just jump in? And it also doesn't mean that the county's writing a check.
Correct.
No. It's going to come out of the taxes of the employees of Amazon.
Correct.
So
I mean, the point is,
it's painless.
It's not painless, but it does balance out over the long haul. And if they don't come, they don't come.
But
no harm, no foul.
50,000 jobs is pretty darn attractive.
Well, not only that, it is the state commitment to funding infrastructure.
Correct.
You know,
Montrose Parkway, here we come.
If we got 20 separate employers to come, we would have the same needs to satisfy, but not that check from the state.
I would feel differently if it was the Olympics coming to Montgomery County. That would be a different...
I think we all agree on that. Okay, with the legislative session over, the primary election cycle has shifted into high gear. Susan, on Sunday night, Comptroller Peter Francho attended a rally in Annapolis to kick out Speaker Mike Bush and Senate President Mike Miller. He's vowed that he will campaign against the two longtime legislative leaders. This sounds like political death, but he has no opponents. What gives?
Well, your guess is as good as mine, Susan. I have no idea what he's doing, but as I mentioned earlier, he did have a bad session this year, especially his craft brewery bill, hoping to help out on craft beer brewers. And that didn't go anywhere. And now it looks like there's a threat to the Public Works Board to take away the decision making on school construction, which would further neuter the board that he serves on. So I just think I can't describe what's going on with him.
Peter Franchot for governor in 2022,
I
perhaps?
don't think so.
Well, that's his plan.
Okay, John, the Rockville City Council's just approved voting by mail. This is a bold move in these days of ongoing news coverage of the Russian involvement in our 2016 presidential election and concerns, of course, for continued tampering. As a voter in Montgomery County, do you believe your vote's secure?
I do, because I trust the Montgomery County Board of Elections. I think they're good. But I will tell you, everybody needs to be concerned about, ballot access by lots of people over computers. I will tell you, voting by mail is something that is not a strange thing. Oregon has voting by mail.
Washington State.
Washington State. There are many states that do this. It's not like it's a strange thing. So hats off to Rockville to try it. But we all need to be concerned about the whole
There are
voting
some
process.
statistics that have shown some problems with that. Lots
Yeah,
of
no,
problems.
and I
they
don't
have to work
disagree with
that
that.
out.
But I do think it's something that makes sense.
coming in the future.
It opens up access to the ballot for a lot of people. It makes it easier for them to vote. I think we should expand voting days. I mean, all of those things are
By
good
the way,
things.
does anyone know if the legislation passed that would do voter registration same day in
did
the
pass.
general?
It
It did.
It did.
It did.
Okay.
Look,
Motor
anything
voter.
that
Rockville's
makes
already
it
had
easier
it.
for people to vote is a good thing. The real question is getting people willing to do that.
Yeah.
Turnout is a challenge.
Yeah.
But we do need to protect the ballot. I mean, this whole issue of electronic ballots and the
Well, we
Yeah,
have
we
the
need a paper ballot.
Yeah, the paper ballot
And we
is
have
very
that.
important.
We have that backup. And I will tell you, I know that I heard multiple conversations that we shouldn't have same-day registration. Back in the good old days, I registered same day. Minnesota's been doing this since the 70s.
Rockville
And
hasn't.
Yeah,
Rockville
and
doesn't.
it works. Okay, now Brigitta, Republicans have intensified their opposition to Delegate Aruna Miller, who's a Democratic congressional candidate for the 6th District. Can you tell us why she is being so intently targeted? Is she seen as the biggest opponent to Amy Ober? Or what is the reason?
Well, the main thing is that in Maryland, we just don't have any conservative representation. And Aruna Miller is very, very liberal. And she's been very much against a lot of Hogan's proposals. And I wouldn't just say it's about Amy Hogan. It's about a liberal person in representing us. We don't have any
But
representation.
isn't that what the general election? I've not seen this
It
here
is
before.
bizarre. We think it's bizarre.
In the primary.
Frankly, and it's great for Aruna. It's getting her a lot of name
Well,
recognition. She's going to be the sympathy candidate.
I don't think it's a personal thing, but she is considered by the Republicans a very liberal and very dangerous
won't they
and
you
wait?
guys
harmful.
Why
have to
aren't they
consider
waiting?
your strategy. I'm just saying.
This is
Why
not
are
my-
you
They
so
waiting
used
till
to
the general
losing?
election is the
It's not
question.
my personal strategy for one.
I'm just
okay?
saying it's
I just-
But my
entertaining.
goal is to help us get a conservative elected.
That's not going to do it.
Well, we can try. We can try.
Yeah. Okay.
No,
well,
I think the thing that's interesting is they've targeted a minority woman to do this to. And I just think from a Republican Party, if I were the operative in the Republican Party, I would say,
hold
this
back.
doesn't make sense.
Maybe it's her
from them.
record that we're attacking.
okay, but that's
that's
for
true.
the general.
And
okay,
that's-
wait a minute. I got to cut you
It's
off
not
there.
personal.
Nancy,
It's not
Governor
personal.
Hogan is on a re-election campaign tour, going to Montgomery College. to Maryland college campuses, which is a hotbed of potential voters. As an astute observer, been around for a while. How do you assess the gubernatorial election 7 months out?
Well, the challenge is the Democrats have a primary right now. They're going to eat their young. And
Or they're old.
We'll see what comes out after June 26th. Hopefully we will have a great candidate. And then the real battle will begin, which is with Governor Hogan. He's well liked.
Can I? Yeah, I was
he's
going to
there,
mention
and
one
it's
second.
going to be a
2
challenge.
2 seconds. I would just tell you, Governor Hogan is very popular. Democrats need to realize that, and they need to organize it.
And come out and vote. Okay, stay tuned for parting shots. We're going to be right back. Before we start parting shots, we have two new faces here tonight, Brigitta Mulligan and Nancy Floreen, who's been around a long time, but we tend not to have elected officials on the show, but Nancy's special. She's not running for election, and there's no one who knows more than Nancy. And Brigitta's been engaged with voting rights and Leave of Women Voters in Rockville for a long time, so I want to thank you two especially for being here tonight. Now with parting shots, we start out with you, Susan.
So the March for Our Lives was inspirational for a lot of us older people, but it was also inspirational for a lot of young kids. And at the most recent Recreation and Parks Advisory Board, a group of 6 youngsters from Burning Tree Elementary School came to implore the board to build a skate park in Bethesda, and Isaac Gilgoff led the charge with a loose leaf book, a tie, a jacket, chino pants, and looked adorable. Keep your eye on Isaac Gilgoff. He's a comer.
John, you're next.
That's awesome. How do you beat that? I want to shout out to the school board, the Board of Education in Montgomery County, for naming 6 of those members, naming Barney Rudston a school after him. He's a civil rights leader.
Is he still alive?
No. Long since gone. But he worked with Martin Luther King in the civil rights movement, but he was gay. And throughout the history of the civil rights movement, his picture as being part of the civil rights movement was kind of put to the background. And I think it's really incredible that the school board did this, because as a person who's come out late in life, understanding what happens in those decades and helping kids understand that that's okay is really important.
Brigitta, you're up.
Well, I tell you, it's been an exciting General Assembly session for me, because I was involved with a bunch of people who were trying to fight the sanctuary state again. That bill came up again, and there was 46 of us who organized, got together, and planned to come to Annapolis, and we thought we might be there all night, because the year before, as you know, the opposition is always at the end, and it took us past 12 o'clock last year. I'm impressed because we had 5,000 signatures, and we had the whole group. And my biggest shout out is for Governor Hogan. I think he has been wonderful for this state. My taxes and fees have not gone up. He's balanced the budget for the last 4 years. So shout out to the governor. Shout out to No Sanctuary City.
Nancy.
Two things. Well, we just finished about 5 separate public hearings on the budget. We heard from about 160 people. We had one person who said, don't spend so much money, and everybody else wants us to spend more money. That's kind of the way it is. But I can tell you with considerable certainty that we're not going to raise property taxes this year. So that's a good thing. But number 2, and this is my big pitch, I want people to remember to make sure they're registered to vote.
Absolutely.
Our turnout in the primaries have been abysmal, particularly in the Up County. And I have to tell you, if you are an independent, get in the game, pick a team, some people, and vote.
Okay, thank you very much. And on Saturday of this weekend, the Bethesda Library is being named after Connie Morella, who is alive and well. Congrats, Connie. So I want to thank our panel and to you, our viewers, for joining us each and every week for Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show. 21 this week. We'll see you next time. I'm Susan Hoffmann, and bye for now.